As a certain famous professor might say, many Lorcana players ask the question, is it worth it to buy the new Illumineer's Trove from the Into the Inklands expansion? Well, as of today, I have an answer. The Illumineer's Trove is a recurring product in Lorcana's line. We've seen them in both the first chapter and the Rise of the Floodborn expansion. In both these sets, the Illumineer's Trove contained pretty much the same thing. 8 booster packs, a lore book and collector's guide, 2 paper deck boxes, a bunch of damage counters, and a really cool storage box complete with removable lid. And before I tell you whether or not it's worth it to buy these, I have to say one thing. If you're a person who's looking to play Lorcana as cheaply as possible, we'll always tell you that buying singles is probably the way to go. You're most likely not going to get the cards you need from buying packs, so unless you're going to buy a ton and sell some and whatever, just buy the singles. It's the cheapest way to go. But if you're somebody who's a collector and you like having the ephemera and the various products that come out, and you also like cracking packs, the Illumineer's Trove so far has been an excellent product, and the Into the Inklands version is going to be even better, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But first we have to talk about pricing and value. The Illumineer's Trove comes in at an MSRP of just around $50. With 8 booster packs, that means that each booster pack is costing you about $6.25, which is about 25 cents over MSRP for booster packs. Therefore, for an extra $2, you're getting everything else that comes in the Illumineer's Trove, everything I've mentioned before. Now, some of these products are more useful than others. In previous videos, we've mentioned that the deck boxes, although cool, are a little bit flimsy and probably not terribly durable. So they're fun to have for collecting purposes, but they're probably not super useful. However, the lore book is very cool if you're into lore or if you're into collecting and want the checklist in the back. And I'd also argue that the best part, I'd also argue that the best part of the Illumineer Trove is this storage box. Not only is it beautiful, featuring the key art from the set, but it's functional, giving you room to store plenty of cards or deck boxes. You could tote this thing back and forth to the game store in your backpack, or you could sit it on a shelf where it'll look beautiful and hold some of your favorite Lorcana cards. As a fun note, they did tweak the design of these between sets. The first chapter box had a glossy finish, where Rise of the Floodborn has a more matte finish, which is super cool. I actually think I prefer the matte version better. But the bottom line is, if you're a collector at all, paying an extra $2 for that storage box, the lore book, and the other trinkets that come with it is not a terrible deal. And I would argue that if you're going to open booster packs, opening a Trove is probably one of the more fun products to experience opening. And at $50, it's priced pretty well. There's something else that makes them kind of neat, and that is, to this point, we have not seen Troves reprinted. To rewind a little bit, when the first chapter came out, prices skyrocketed when product was really hard to find, and Ravensburger announced pretty quickly that they were going to do a mass reprinting in order to get more cards to market.
We have drastically increased our production capacity, and hopefully many of you watching this have already seen the effects of this, but this is something we're going to constantly watch as we grow this wonderful game, Lorcana.
Well, they reprinted booster boxes and they reprinted starter decks, but they did not reprint Troves, and I can imagine that it's probably because of logistics. To reprint Troves, not only would they have to reprint the cards and the packaging, but they'd have to reprint the storage boxes and the pamphlets and the deck boxes, and it would be a logistical nightmare. So perhaps the initial print run of Troves is all we'll ever see in a particular set. And if you're one of those people who likes to stash an unopened box away in your shelf for sentimental purposes, this has implications. It means that Troves are guaranteed to always contain the first print run of cards. So for example, the card Work Together in the first set had a typo where Pacha's name was misspelled as Pasha, and they corrected this in later print runs. If you're somebody who cares about having the original printing, Troves are guaranteed that you'll open first print run cards. Again, to many of you that may not matter, but to some people, it's a cool thing. And we can see this in secondary market pricing. Illumineer Troves in the first chapter were opened quite a bit, and as a result, there's not terribly many sealed on the secondary market. And the ones that are going for quite a bit of money. Those $50 Troves are selling in marketplaces for upwards of $100 and in one case, $300. Now, I'm not saying that they're necessarily worth that much money, and I don't advise spending that much on them. But what I am saying is that that kind of pricing indicates that Troves are kind of a special product to some people. And there's an acknowledgement that as they're open, there may be no more coming. Now, to date, we haven't seen that kind of price reflected on Rise of the Floodborn Troves, which continue to sit at right around MSRP. You can find them in many places still for $50, and on the secondary market, that's about what they're selling for. This is probably because there's a lot more Rise of the Floodborn product out there right now, and because the contents of the Rise of the Floodborn box mirror what was in the first chapter box. And so they're not quite as special anymore. You get another couple paper deck boxes, you get more counters, you get a lore book, and you get the storage box. So for completionists, they may want those, but for some people, the novelty had worn off. But I want to talk about the Into the Inklands Trove, because we learned today that it's going to have new trinkets. So like the previous Troves, this Trove will have 8 booster packs of game cards, it'll have the storage box, which I think is pretty cool and so far has been the best part of the Trove, but it tosses out those paper deck boxes and damage counters, and instead you get a few cool things which I think are usable. First, you get 6 card dividers, which if you have bulk Lorcana cards, you know that it's a pain sorting your cards, and having those dividers will be pretty cool. There are 6, so I can imagine there's going to be one for each ink color, and I can't wait to see what they look like. They might be plastic, they'll probably be paper, but either way, they're going to be functional. Second, you get 6 damage counter dice. So they've thrown out the tokens and instead are using dice which you can use to track your damage, which a lot of experienced TCG players use anyway. I can't wait to see what they look like because according to Ravensburger, they have a magical ink appearance with gold printed numbers, and I imagine they're going to look pretty cool. And finally, you get a lore counter, a spinny lore counter which you can use, again, functionally when you're playing the game. So what does this mean? If the price stays the same, for an extra $2, you get all of these cool accessories. You get the really cool storage box, which I think is amazing. You get 6 card dividers, which you can actually use. You get 6 dice, which you can use to track damage. And you also get a lore counter. Now, will you use all of these things? Maybe, maybe not, but you'll probably use some of them. And for completionists, they'll want to have them all. And to be frank, for $2, it seems like a no-brainer. Now, I'd really like to show you what these products look like in person, so Ravensburger, if you're watching. What I can say is Aaron and I will be hunting one of these down because we love opening Troves and we can't wait to see what the products look like. So if you're like us and when a set comes out you like to crack a few packs, the Illumineer's Trove is definitely a fun way to do it, and you get to experience all of the fun products that Ravensburger's brought to us for this particular set. So once again, if you're looking to play the game as cheaply as possible, I do recommend you stick to singles. But for my money, you can't go wrong with an Illumineer's Trove. So have you opened a Trove before? Do you want to? Leave us a note in the comments below, and if there's any other Lorcana products you're wondering about, make sure to subscribe and let us know what you want us to cover next. Until next time, sign off catchphrase.